Well, for more analysis, we can speak now to Julien THERON, who is an associated researcher at the Arab Center for Research and Political Studies here in Paris, in the French capital. That school, of course, known by its acronym CAREP. But thank you so much for speaking to us. What is your understanding of what the United States was seeking to achieve when it carried out that attack?
That's actually a very good question, and that's a bit of a hidden question. While what we can think about the magnitude of this action and the consequences, as your package just related, is unknown. And there are two elements. If it's in terms of strategy, well, I'm afraid that would be counterproductive because it would announce an Iranian reaction. And in terms of politics, of course, this is a main gesture. But the problem is that the political side of it can't prevail on the strategic side, meaning that this action will induce some consequences that might be actually quite destructive and destabilizing for the region.
Yeah, it's just interesting. I mean, I don't know if we should read anything into it, but the Lebanese foreign ministry is saying that it wants to distance itself from those events, that Lebanon doesn't want to be affected by those events in Iran. I mean, do you think this is one country's way of perhaps putting a layer between it and Iran, which perhaps, you know, with the involvement of Hezbollah on Lebanese soil, is another sign that Lebanon basically wants to be somewhat shaken from the shackles of Hezbollah, or at least that's how some people in Lebanon see it. That's just one example. What do you read into that?
Well, it is very clear that Lebanon is more or less linked to this whole affair, while Hezbollah is a main part of what the pro-Tehran militias call themselves the axis of resistance. It's worked with the Hashid al-Shaabi, these Iraqi Shia pro-Tehran militias in Syria, and also participated as a model and sometimes as a trainer for these militias. So, of course, Lebanon is more or less linked. More or less, we have seen also the Sheikh Hassan Nasrallah, the head of Hezbollah, talking and crying. And that's a very important sign for what is happening, that the answer of Iran might be just as the Al-Quds branch of the IRGC is. It's a regional organization, and then Iran can induce a regional answer to this action.
Yeah, and just looking more broadly at Iran's possible options at this stage, I mean, maybe the Trump administration took a calculated assumption that, you know, Iran cannot really respond very effectively because it's not well positioned to do so. The country is cash-strapped, and it's fighting all sorts of different conflicts on all sorts of different fronts. I mean, I mentioned the situation in Lebanon, which has been unstable lately. It's got its own domestic affairs, the upheaval in Iraq, the situation in Syria, the situation in Yemen. I mean, Iran, a country with limited financial resources at the moment, cannot really afford any more conflict at this particular moment. Do you think that was the calculation the Trump administration made?
Perhaps it's hard to say, but two things on what you said. There's a lot of different issues, but the first one is that this was the worst way to deal with the pro-democratic protest in Iran, while now the regime is showing a huge support for itself and you're trying to unify the whole country behind the Ayatollah. So this is like a kind of break of the last political session inside Iran that we have seen. In the region, you're right. No, the Rouhani strategy of reintegrating Iran in the international scene through negotiation and a deal on the nuclear program worked, while President Trump went away from this deal. And but the IRGC strategy didn't work that much, while in Syria there's no reconstruction, while there was the protest in Baghdad against the Iranian influence, and also protest inside Iran, and the US sanctions and so on. So you're right, the country is not in a good situation, but don't forget that an answer, and possibly an armed or a conflictual answer, might not be of a traditional purpose. They might not invade more than they did the whole region and so on, but it might be about asymmetrical warfare and just some hits here and there. So you see that they are very well implanted in the countries you mentioned, Yemen, Lebanon, Iraq, and Syria. So they could touch, and including abroad, in outside the region, for instance, they could touch US interests. So I'm not completely sure that the fact that Iran is in a pretty harsh financial situation might actually limit that much their possibilities to answer.
All right, well, thank you very much indeed for speaking to us and sharing your analysis with us. Julien THERON, Associate Researcher at the Arab Center of Research and Political Studies here in the French capital. Thank you.